views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
All right, welcome to today's verdict. I'm your host, David Lesch. We have a big show for you today. It's Sexual Awareness Month. We have two individuals who are going to be on from New York City Alliance Against Sexual Assault. We also have Professor Joseph Schofer, who's going to be discussing President Biden's infrastructure plan. And finally, Marjorie Velazquez is on. She's a candidate for City Council. As you can see, we have much to get to, so stay tuned. Today's verdict starts right now. Welcome back to today's verdict. Thanks for being here. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. Well, it is a Sexual Awareness Month, and we have two guests with us starting off the show. Very important, Azaleea, Carlea, hope I get that correct, and Jacquelin Hacker. Ladies, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
All right, let's start.
Yeah.
You know, we got dual screens here, so we're going to get right to it. It's a very, very important month. It's a very, very important topic. Let's start off right now, and we'll start with you, Jacquelin. There's a difference between a sexual assault and sexual harassment. Am I correct? Tell the viewers what the difference is, if you could.
Absolutely. So sexual assault is non-consensual physical contact. It is criminal. And sexual harassment is not always criminal. It can be, but it's unlawful under employment discrimination laws. And it's a spectrum. In New York City, it's defined as gender-based discrimination. You know, that could be either verbal comments or physical contact. Although it can arise to the criminal level, certainly if it includes a sexual assault or if it includes stalking or something like that.
All right, so we're living in a time of COVID. We're not finished yet. Is there an uptick in harassment, assault cases? What has been your experience?
Our experience initially with the pandemic was definitely a downtick in calls, you know, from March to about the midsummer. But once the city started opening up again, we definitely experienced an uptick. And I would say we're still experiencing that now. And of course, that's because, you know, people were locked in homes with their abusers. They were, you know, kept in apartments with their intimate partners. So children weren't going to schools. And of course, you know, so it was harder to detect child abuse during the lockdown, but yes, to answer your question, there's certainly been an uptick.
There has been an uptick. Azaleea, let's get to you because I want to ask you a question. We're talking a little bit about off camera in terms of technology and how technology has affected the rise in sexual harassment. Maybe not assault because you can't reach through the screen, but certainly with harassment. What is your experience with respect to technology and harassment cases?
Well, given that, you know, our lives have moved online, everything is virtual now, which, you know, there's pluses and minuses. Some clients, you know, prefer having a virtual courtroom so they don't have to be, you know, in person with someone who harmed them. But, you know, because everything has moved online now, abuse has moved online. Technology facilitated assault is very serious. It happens a lot. It can make someone's life hell. You know, we've seen people being exploited with the threats of sharing intimate photos, intimate, you know, videos online, you know, with people's community, schools, employers. And, you know, when something is on the internet, it is very hard to take it down. You know, Jackie and I do our best, but it is a very, very complex legal process to get those images and content down.
Well, let me ask you a question. As the director of legal services, are you finding the calls that are they calls coming into you? Are people actually knocking on the door? Are they sending you emails about things that are happening? Where do you find the contact more often than not?
Well, people aren't knocking on our doors because we are still virtual. We are still working remotely, but they can call us, they can email us, they can chat with us on our website. People can go to svfreenyc.org, that's sexualviolencefreenyc.org, and contact us in a variety of ways. We actually initiated the chat function to allow people the privacy, to engage with us on the computer without necessarily having a phone call conversation where that could be overheard.
Jacquelin, let's talk law. Let's talk courtrooms at least. Do you find that you're in a virtual courtroom when it comes to these type of cases? Do you have to get in there and somehow, I have depositions and I have different things. It's not so easy to coordinate this. What has been your experiences in the courtroom, Jacquelin?
Yes, so it was certainly a challenge, and we work a lot with family court, and they've been a lot slower than a lot of other New York State courts. They have started to hold trials. I haven't had the opportunity to attend one yet, but I have one in the next few weeks. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I know it'll be quite difficult with presenting evidence, publishing it. If even to the judge. So, it's been challenging, and it's especially challenging for our clients that have technology limitations. Sure. So we've tried to be flexible and allow clients to come into our office if need be, because it's not easy for everyone to appear virtually.
All right, Azaleea, I'll throw it back to you for a second. I want to talk a little bit about, because we don't have too much time left, some tips. There's somebody watching today, a woman or man could be sexually harassed, all right? Some tips that you would give to somebody who's watching today. They don't know what to do. They don't know who to turn to. They're still stuck in that apartment with that person who's abusing them. What would you tell that person who's watching right now?
Well, I would say you're not alone. We are here for you. We see you. We hear you. We believe you. You can always call us. Like I said, our services are free. You can call us at 212-229-0345, or you can email legalsupport@svfreenyc.org. We represent everyone across the 5 boroughs, regardless of, gender. I mean, this happens to all genders, regardless of your immigration status, regardless of your ability to pay. We are here for you, and we can help you access the services and the justice that you deserve.
And the last thing before I let you ladies go, with respect to the emergency room, this is, I think, is very important. When you're assaulted, or even if you're just harassed and mentally you're just not there right now, and you go to the emergency room, what are your rights in terms of examination, in terms of your ability to let people know what's going on? What goes on there? Because I know that's one of the first places that you make the complaint if you're somebody who's been harassed or assaulted.
Well, it certainly can be. In terms of harassment, that is a labor and employment issue. So we would encourage folks to speak with either us, we can provide those referrals, or with a labor and employment attorney. In terms of the immediate aftermath of a traumatic assault, yes, people can go to emergency rooms. We highly recommend that they go to ones that have a sexual assault forensic examiner, professional, whether they're a nurse or any medical practitioner, that knows exactly how to conduct these examinations and collect the evidence that may be necessary, and for a rape kit, that can be used in a criminal prosecution at some point down the line if the survivor chooses that route. But they should absolutely ask for a safe or sane examiner. And there are rape crisis centers around the city. You can actually go to our website. You can put in your zip code and find the one that's closest to you. That will help you in a very trauma-informed way, survivor-centered way. We believe that being trauma-informed really lessens the devastating impact of an assault on a survivor.
Well, we'll leave it there. We want to thank both of you for joining us. Sexual Awareness Month is so important. And hopefully both of you, or even one of you, will come back in the future and let us know how things are going.
Happy to do it.
Thank you
for having us.
It's our pleasure. All right, stay with us. We have so much more. Today's verdict will be back right after this. All right, we are very excited today to have Professor Joseph Schofer with us today. Professor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and I just looked at a webcam from New York, and it looks like you're doing well too.
Everything's doing nicely here with some nice weather, which it's some spring in New York City. We could use that, a little bit of some fresh air. Let's talk infrastructure, and let's start by maybe you can just define for the viewers, when we talk infrastructure, what do we really mean? What encompasses the word infrastructure?
Well, it depends on who you ask, but I'm trained as a civil engineer, and I characterize infrastructure as the physical plant, as the physical structure that supports civil society. So it's the transit system, the fixed part of it. It's the road network, the bridges in New York. New York is the best city in the country to go to look at bridges. It's the buildings, private buildings, as well as public buildings. And it's the things that you and I don't see on a daily basis that make life in a big city possible. It's the water supply system. So New York has one of the best water supply systems in the world. It's the sewage treatment, the collection of wastewater and the treatment of wastewater. And it's the school buildings. It's all of that physical stuff, a lot of which you can see, a lot of which you can't see, but which support the quality of life in the city.
And it's a word that's all over the news lately, in the federal level as well as our local level. And it's such a bold attempt right now from all areas to try and fix the infrastructure, certainly, in New York City itself. Have you seen this during your lifetime? Is this something that's new?
Every new administration, every new federal administration in the last 30 or 40 years has come to the table and said, we're going to have an infrastructure renewal reinvestment program. Some have been successful, most have not been successful. And frankly, my concern is it's a seasonal topic. It's a system that we depend on in our daily lives, but it becomes an issue at the right political season. And we talk about it for a while, and then it fades away until there is an incident, an event, a failure, which draws our attention back to infrastructure.
And what does the failure tend to be? Is it, God forbid, a collapsing bridge? Is it accidents because of potholes? What generally is the impetus to make people say, you know what, it's time, this is where we need to spend our money?
It's usually a large-scale crisis. And two kinds that I can think of. One is I'll call an accident, a large-scale bridge failure. Such failures are rare. They get a lot of attention when they happen. They're disasters. People are usually killed and injured. So we focus on that for a while, when we spend a fair amount of time trying to find blame and resolve the problem. But my concern is the issue fades away quickly, and 3 months later we're thinking about something else and we forget about that problem. The other kind of infrastructure disaster is a natural disaster. So you had a couple of big storms going through New York in the last decade. Superstorm Sandy, Hurricane Irene, very destructive in many ways, and pointed out some of the infrastructure weaknesses, the vulnerabilities, and attracted attention, and resources were poured into building protection. But there's a lot left to be done, and I think that ball has been dropped.
Well, is President Biden's plan really another plan with a different name? In other words, I know you had mentioned, or we had talked about this either off camera, I read some of your stuff about an economic plan. Is this an economic plan, an infrastructure plan? What is this plan?
It's an economic development plan that sailed under the flag of infrastructure. I don't say that in a pejorative way. It is what it is. He has an agenda. He came into office with an agenda, which is a broad agenda. Infrastructure is a part of it, but there are many other components to that. And I'm not prepared for or even interested in criticizing the plan, because it's more than infrastructure, but it's infrastructure as well. So that's a significant part of it.
What do you like of the plan? In particular, is there particular areas of the plan so far that you seem to to think is really where we should begin. I don't know whether it's roadways, if it's bridges, tunnels. I don't know.
Everybody's problem is a different problem. So what Columbus, Ohio needs is different from what New York City needs. But all of these large conglomerations of people and the rural areas as well have infrastructure deficits that, quote, need to be addressed. What's highest priority? It's really more of a political decision, but I think of things like what is critically important to us. So if I look at New York, there are half a dozen or more bridges that are critically important to New York. A couple of really important ones in the Bronx.
It always seems that the poor do get the short end of the stick here when it turns to infrastructure. It's the last ones that gets the work done, and certainly in the Bronx, that could be the situation here. But let me just ask you very quickly. With infrastructure plans, there is a displacement that occurs. There's a displacement that comes to a community. There's just displacements that come to people while the work gets done. Even traffic, ends up in different places. How can we get past that to get this plan going? Because nobody likes change and displacement either, Professor.
Well, so you opened up a very large Pandora's box, because if we look at the history, and this has to be another conversation that we have, we look at the history of building large infrastructure, particularly in what I've looked at literally in the last few days for another talk that I gave, is the building of the urban interstate systems. You mentioned the Cross Bronx Expressway, and we can—
Cross Bronx Expressway destroyed that neighborhood.
Yeah, but with all due love and respect for New York, you're not unique. We did this in Boston. We did this in Chicago. We did this in Los Angeles. Some cities escaped. Some cities were able to avoid that because of public policy, because of local resistance. There's a case going on in Houston right now about widening an interstate highway in the center of the city that will displace a low-income community. I don't know the details of it, but I'm thrilled to see that it's popped to the surface, because now you have an administration in Washington that's listening to the cries of people at the local level and at least raising the question, should we really be doing this? If you look at the history of this kind of construction, we were less than insensitive to some of these communities. We were intentionally destructive of these communities. It's the cheapest real estate, and it's the people that we care least about. There have been a whole series of federal legislation and regulations that have rebalanced that, but it's a legacy that we have to deal with. When I think about infrastructure and this new infrastructure program, I'm thinking primarily about rebuilding, fixing, bringing things back, bringing facilities back to good condition. If you're going to start talking to me about building new highways in the city, then I would say we need to have a separate conversation, because that's probably not a good thing to be doing right now.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. We're going to have you back, Professor. You gave us some great insight today on infrastructure. And to be honest with you, we have a lot of work to do. So we really appreciate you coming on today.
It's fun. We'll do it again.
Wonderful. All right. Stay with us. We have so much more for you. Today's verdict comes back right after this. Okay, we are excited to have with us a city council candidate, Marjorie Velazquez. Marjorie, how are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you holding up?
Okay, I just want to say I do love your background. It's very fresh and spring, and I think it's great. And I want to congratulate you on your candidacy. For some of the viewers who don't know you, why don't you just tell them a little bit about yourself?
So happy spring to all. So Marjorie Velazquez, running for City Council here in District 13. So for folks that don't know, it's the northeast section of the Bronx. It encompasses some parts of Allerton all the way down to Locust Point, Silver Beach. Edgewater also has my own neighborhood of Thraw's Neck, Westchester Square as well, and everywhere in between, including City Island. I know everyone loves City Island for a good meal, so we also include them because I am a big foodie. I'm a Bronx girl through and through, born and raised here. My parents came from Puerto Rico in the 70s and had an opportunity to leave when the Bronx was burning, but they chose to stay and raise me and my siblings here. And for us, that has been our guiding point. When the times are tough, you stay down, you stay here.
Marjorie, you mentioned it. A lot of the communities have gone through some very difficult times in the Bronx. In terms of COVID and the COVID recovery, what are your thoughts on that? Does it seem to be progressing at this point?
So COVID hit us hard, right? Why? Because the Bronx is one of the highest areas that has the highest concentration of frontline workers. And seeing early on the passion of folks going out there, risking it all just to protect us, just so that we can have a way of life. And it's about giving back that dignity and that respect of folks that were there so early on, that would go home and have that pressure on top of themselves and that anxiety of like, am I going to contaminate my families, right? Like keep that mindset that we did not know what last year looked like. And those folks, they are our heroes. This is our modern day heroes, and they deserve that respect. And what does that mean as we're recovering? It means that they should have hazard pay, right? Early on, they should have had it. Certainly, they should have it continuously. They should have the right health care. And where we're talking about health care, we really need to emphasize the fact that mental health is health care, that we need to normalize talking about mental health and understand that what we went through was one of the most traumatic experiences as a whole, as a country, as a nation, as a whole world, and that we need to be there for each other. And we also need to really talk about how we're going to progress and making sure that we're staffing up.
For every person that passed away, there were 9 people who are grieving as a result of it. So you could just think of the millions and the millions of people, and certainly in the Bronx as well. And, I want to mention, the food insecurity, which really hit me hard, when I heard about this. My clients in the South Bronx, so many people, pantry lines. What can we do about that? Any thoughts?
So lots of thoughts, because I did start a mutual aid last year when it just started up. And that's kind of what led me to run here in 2021, was because as we were reaching out to folks, there was this need. And if there's anything that I'm known for is providing food for all. Just in my general way, I had suffered through some food insecurity, and that experience never leaves you, right? And so certainly because I went through it, I never ever want to see anyone go hungry. So I do walk around with a ton of snacks. I am that person. So if you ever see me on the street, I really do have like 10 bars of granola in my bag, because that is me. But when we were doing the mutual aid work, we definitely noticed that. And one of our beginning points too was reaching out to the different communities, right? At the time, Ramadan had started, and what food they were getting was not halal. It was just like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which, we could do better. And we did. And we were able to deliver to folks for a while through all of Ramadan, even afterwards. And it was creating this bond and community and uplifting folks. So as we're recovering and what we're looking at the food insecurity, we certainly have to have conversations of using our schools and continuing to use our schools as grab and go sites. And we have to launch and really take a good look at community-based schools, because this is a beginning point, right? Where we're saying to families, this isn't, our education system is not confined to these 4 walls. It actually, as you have seen, has taken it to your home, and it is about a foundation of building our families up. It's recognizing needs and letting folks know that we're in this together. We're not going anywhere, and you're certainly my neighbor, and my job is to make sure that you're taken care of. Your job is to make sure I'm taken care of. No one is taking all this burden on their own.
So you briefly mentioned it in terms of, getting the New Yorkers back to work, expanding unemployment insurance. What could we do? What can we do? Because to get them back to work, they can get some money, to be able to pay for some food. What are your thoughts on that as a candidate?
So we're slowly opening up. And as a candidate, my concern is also making sure that people are still aware of testing and vaccinations, right? Now with my biggest concern right now, as of this week is the fact that the Johnson & Johnson situation may deter people from getting shots. And I certainly would like to advocate and go back and double down and say, please get vaccinated. Your health, our recovery depends on it. It's something you talk with your doctor or whatever, which vaccine works best for you. But ultimately, please get vaccinated. And that should be our starting point. So working with those levels and now understanding the different standards that we need to have within organizations, right? The spacing, making sure that folks have proper PPE. How do we develop that? Those are the conversations we have to have in mind as we're looking up to opening our businesses, right? And specifically our small businesses that are struggling so much. I like the idea of the outdoor space being used. My hope and wish would be that there is a standardization process in how they are not only developed, but how enforcement comes to them. Because unfortunately, I've seen in my district, literally the same outdoor space created in two different restaurants, and one gets a $10,000 violation while the other still exists without violations, right? So when we're talking about standardization, when we're talking about enforcement, it's about communicating to the organizations, hey, this is a potential violation. You have X, Y, Z time to do it, but also reaching out to the other group, right? You can't hold one to one standard and the other. And I think this is one of the broader issues that we have faced throughout. And now certainly in these times, as we're opening our businesses, we have no luxury to play with those games, right? Our families depend on these small businesses. They are what sustain us. They are even safety points for my family. When we were kids, my dry cleaner was it, right? If anything ever happens to you, run to the dry cleaners, we will take you. And that was always our safe space. So when we're looking at our communities, how do we build up? It's having that. Also, when we're talking about working with our state and federal partners to make sure that that federal money is rolling out how it should, and that we're sustaining our families in the right way. So when we're looking at unemployment insurance and extending those benefits, and when we're looking even having grants, right? For our small businesses, the pop-ups that really do need it. When we're looking at fresh bucks, right? Using money for our families to access better food qualities for us all. This is the stuff that we need to really look at too.
Well, you have quite a job ahead of you, is all I have to say. I think you're up to the task. I mean, hopefully if you are successful. And if you do win, or even if you don't, we expect you to come back and say hello and let us know how you are, okay?
Most definitely. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure having you. All right, stay with us. Today's verdict isn't done yet. We'll have more for you right after this. All right, well, that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and of course, you, the viewers, for watching. If you have a topic or an issue you'd like me to discuss on a future show, just email me at davidlesch@bronxnet.org. Always remember, know the law, reach a verdict. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care.